What is up, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of IFD Radio Live. I am your host, Alex Massetti, and today has been a very active day in the calciomercato, the transfer market. We've got a lot we're going to have to cover in the short, about 45 minutes that we have on the air tonight. But a big day for the new era of co-ownership deals. Last year, one of Tavecchio and the FIGC, the Italian FA, one of the big new reforms that they unveiled was the end of the traditional co-ownership agreement, which means that two players could own equal rights, or two teams could own equal rights to a player's contract. That was a very confusing and a very costly procedure that teams used, and it ultimately ended Parma. So the new age of cooperation, co-ownership, the new age of teams working together to help bring players to Serie A is upon us. And that is in the form of what Italian newspapers call synergy. You have teams working in sync to bring a player to Serie A. Most of the time, it involves a large Italian giant and a small or mid-table size club working together to sign and develop a player. And we've already had a few instances of that in this transfer window. Primarily, we have seen Juventus and Inter using the new system of co-ownership. And basically, today we're going to get started with Stefano Sensi, the regista, the holding midfielder from Cesena, who's burst onto the scene, as I like to call him, the new Matti. But today Sky has been reporting all day about Cesena, Sassuolo, and Juventus meeting in Milan to discuss a deal that would see Stefano Sensi move to Serie A in some capacity come 2016, 2017. So here's the agreement so far. You have Sassuolo will take him on and will quote unquote buy out the player. From there, Sassuolo loans Sensi back to Cesena for the end of the year, until the end of the year, where he will rest. After that, Juventus have put into place an unannounced, pre-agreed price that they will practically redeem Sensi for at a later date. Very similar to what they did with Simone Zaza and with Domenico Berardi. This is a very foolproof way for Sensi to get playing time, Cesena to get paid, Sassuolo to get a player and make money, and Juventus to ultimately, if it works out that way, for them to acquire a very solid player. So Juventus moving in the right direction in terms of bringing in youth. The other player that they've been looking to bring in today that's been mentioned a lot is Marcelo Trotta, and Juventus are looking to buy out Trotta in some fashion, as similar to what's going on with Sensi. But this time they're working with another minnow, Frosinone. The new boys are looking to acquire Marcelo Trotta. They want him for the remainder of this year. They want him actually in Serie A, out of Avellino, where Trotta's at now. But Juventus, if they're going to help finance the deal, they want to have the player, should he grow and should he develop into a more formidable striker. So Juventus making some moves today. Not really anything being signed, although there is suspected that there is an agreement. But overall, not a lot going on in terms of signings. Frosinone loaned out Nicolas Castillo, who had made an appearance to the Universidad Católica in Chile. But in terms of moves becoming official, we're just not there yet. The Mercato is not mature enough yet. But another team that's been very, very active today, a team that's looking at needs a revolution, is Sampdoria. And with Sampdoria, you have a new coach who's come into a crisis situation. We're talking about Sampdoria, who missed out on Europa League qualification to, I believe it was Red Star Belgrade. So there's not been a very good year at all for Sampdoria. But Vincenzo Montella showed signs of beginning to get things back on track with the win, with Cassano coming back strong. And that's all well and dandy. A very good derby victory for Sampdoria against Genoa. But overall, there's three things that you need to know about Sampdoria. There's three players. The big thing is that Montella wants to bring to Sampdoria his proven players, his proven prospects, the guys that he knows best. And those are three players that may actually surprise you and you wouldn't expect at Sampdoria. So you have number one, first and foremost, the guy who I think may or has the highest chance of coming. That's the old 35 or 36-year-old veteran, David Pizarro. He returned to Chile in the summer. He signed with Wanderers, but Montella wants him back in Europe, maybe on a 6-month deal that sees them trying to get things in the right direction for the future. The other one, Mati Fernandez from Fiorentina, he's still there. That was a big player under Montella at his reign with the Viola. And then lastly, you have Giuseppe Rossi. Now, there's a bit of a story with Giuseppe Rossi. At the big Christmas gala for Fiorentina, it's reported that Giuseppe Rossi sat at a table separate from his teammates. Now, Giuseppe Rossi, as we all know his story, tremendous knee injuries. It's very, it wouldn't be too much of a claim to say that Giuseppe Rossi's lucky to still be playing. But he wants out. He's getting very little game time under Paulo Sousa. He scored only 2 goals this entire season. And Sampdoria seems like a good fit for Giuseppe Rossi. It would be very interesting to see once again Cassano and Giuseppe Rossi linked up like they were with the Azzurri 4 years ago. I'm telling you, folks, Giuseppe Rossi has it in him to still be a top-tier striker. With Antonio Cassano, there's magic. There's definitely something there to work with. And for Cassano, I think getting another striker for Sampdoria would really, really benefit the club. Another thing about Sampdoria you need to know is that they've thrown their name in the hat, as well as half of Europe, for Inter defender Andrea Ranocchia. Just in the first few days of the window, we've seen reports that Inter has signed an agreement, or reached an agreement with clubs like Norwich City, Bologna. Liverpool's interested. Torino is reportedly interested. Like I said, half of Europe wants Andrea Ranocchia. Probably just an additional reinforcement heading into the final months of the year, or the final months of the season. There's a lot going on as well in terms of feeling out for the summer. Some players like Juventus looking at Riccardo Saponara from Empoli. You have Lazio making some moves, and we're going to get to all of that. But there's also a team that's missing from all of this that hasn't really made any concrete, waves or anything that looks very interesting, and that's Milan. So AC Milan is a side that is in trouble. AC Milan is a side that is, at the moment, in deep trouble. Their 75, 85 million euro investment this past summer has not changed a thing. There's major problems with the system, the personnel, injuries. And honestly, there's really not a lot that you can be positive about with AC Milan. And they haven't targeted anybody, I think, that would be notable. In fact, the only player that they have been linked with the first few days of the Mercato, and I know it's very early. I know a lot can change. But you're sitting 10 points out of the Champions League, and there's really no clear plan. And if there really was a clear plan, I feel like there would be I feel like there would be a lot more of a sign. It's very possible that AC Milan could have a few, players lined up that they could make some moves. But Marouane Fellaini is at this moment the only one that they have made a link with. So from Manchester United's standpoint, what is there to say? Louis van Gaal doesn't want to let him go. Milan has not been in the running for any of the prospects, such as Mandragora or Sensi or Cristante, who, by the way, is now back at Palermo. There's not, as Gattuso said, non c'è la squadra. There's not a team at Milan. There's three things that Milan need, and I'm going to put it nicely as possible. Number one, the high office, the big dogs for the Rossoneri have got to go. That means realizing that Berlusconi, Galliani, the ones who built the teams that have been successful in the past are the ones who have to go. That's above all. Milan have ran through 4 coaches the last few years. Allegri, Seedorf, Inzaghi, and Mihajlovic. And the problem is the exact same with each coach. It is not the coach's fault. You cannot be wrong that often. The coaches cannot be wrong that often. It's the signings. These teams don't know how. You cannot tell me that AC Milan are better now than they were with Allegri years back. So from here, where do you go? Well, they want to offload De Jong. The LA Galaxy, we just learned today, are interested in Nigel De Jong. That's fine. So you have Nigel De Jong on the way out, who at one point was the backbone of AC Milan. We've brought in players like Kuchka, Bertolacci to reinforce the midfield. Stefan El Shaarawy has been frozen out of Monaco. They will not cross the 25-match appearance marker. They will not cross it. They do not want to pay AC Milan the money, and they do not want to keep El Shaarawy. So Milan, at the moment, look like they have no interest in keeping El Shaarawy on the books. They have no interest in keeping Alessio Cerci on the team as well. So that's all fair and good. But there's no plan. You have fullbacks like Teixeira and Abate struggling. Adriano hasn't scored in some time. Ricardo Montolivo, he's not exactly somebody you build a team around. Alessio Romagnoli, let's be honest with him. He has as much potential as any of the defenders in the Italian Golden Age over 10 years ago. And he has the potential. The sky is the limit with Alessio Romagnoli. He has nobody to look up to at AC Milan. He is already the best defender at AC Milan. And for better or for worse, that is not saying much. Number 2, who has to go, in my opinion? You got to get rid of Mexes. He's a massive liability. and his contract is tremendous. He's got to go. I'm very surprised, actually, we haven't seen any rumors about him being offloaded yet. But I digress. It's still pretty early in the transfer window. Milan built a side with 3 players. They built a side on $85 million euro with 3 players in the attack and an already overloaded side. Carlos Bacca cannot do it all. Balotelli, I'm not even exactly sure if you call him a football player anymore. He's been hurt for so long. He's posting all these recovery photos. Then he gets, there's a setback. I don't know. Maybe Balotelli will be the signing for AC Milan. Maybe the second half of the season will be completely different than before. But there is no long-term solution to the problem. I've been saying it for a long time, probably for around 6 months now. There is no long-term solution to AC Milan. There is no Mr. B. There is no Mr. B. There is no emerging investor who's going to come and spend $500 million for a side that is not worth $500 million. Any smart investor will look at AC Milan for everything it's worth, and that side is not worth 500 million euro on its own. I don't believe it. You can debate me with all the history you want about AC Milan. If you want, you can tell me all about how many Champions League trophies they've won, how many Serie A titles they've won. You can tell me all of that, but let's be 100% honest. From an economic and investing standpoint, you do not care about the amount of trophies AC Milan has when the squad is in this deep of disarray. It's bad news for Milan fans. And for so long, the Rossoneri fan base had Allegri to blame. And now that he is gone, and now that Allegri is winning at Juventus, there is nowhere for them to hide. I applaud the AC Milan NYC fan chapter for going after some of the directors at AC Milan. Because the club itself is wrong on every level. Moving on before I give somebody an ulcer. So Lazio have signed Milan Bisevic, the Montenegrin international from Olympique Lyonnais. I think it's a solid signing, but the bigger rumor now is that, as out of Spain, from the newspaper Sport, that Lazio are looking to make an offer between 6 and 8 million euros to sign Thomas Vermaelen, the Belgian center-back playing for Barcelona. He's not played a lot. It's really unclear if he will be any good, if he even is signed. But the likelihood of this deal, if it is not just merely a rumor, it's not going to happen. I just don't see Thomas Vermaelen coming to Serie A. I'm sorry, I just don't. But Lazio's another side, like AC Milan. Lazio's another side that's in deep trouble. They're going to have to sell. Missing out on the Champions League really pushed them behind the 8 ball. And there's 2 players, even 3, that can draw in a significant amount of revenue. And Lazio can begin to rebuild a squad. Looking at Lazio, they are currently, I'm correct, they're in 10th or 11th place. 14 points out of the Champions League. 9 points out behind Roma, who holds the last Europa League spot. They got to sell. You got to chalk this year up as a loss. You got to rebuild. Felipe Anderson, the Brazilian superstar, who has been heavily linked with Manchester United. Who's been heavily linked for a big move. He's got to go. You have wingers like Kishna, and you have another one, Keita. Those are more than capable replacements, and they have a good coach. Stefano Pioli is a wonderful coach. I say cash in for as much as you possibly can on Felipe Anderson. Maybe even send Billa away too. I think with those two right there, you can fetch around 60 million euro. It's going to be difficult, of course, because you're losing two pillars of the team. And if you really wanted to cut down the team and raise some funds, there's also Antonio Candreva, who in the past has been reportedly linked with Inter Milan. So that's all good and all. That's great. You have the players. You already have the players to begin to rebuild. You have the players you can move and sell to make the money to rebuild the squad. Lazio are not in that bad of shape because I feel like they have the base of the team there to where they can rebuild. De Vrij has been hurt. They have Hoyt. If they get Bisevic, they already signed Milan Bisevic. If they get Vermaelen, they have they've turned a 180 degrees, in my opinion, on their defense. You sell Anderson, you sell Billa, you have Kishna, Keita, and Cataldi, who can fill in those roles pretty easily. They have good skill. I think they're more than capable replacements. You begin to look at ways that Lazio can rebuild. And I think it's actually a quicker process. I think Lazio are in better shape to do a formal rebuilding than AC Milan are, because Lotito has still been the dictator of Lazio. He still has 100% control. There is not a big dramatic situation revolving around him. I think that Lotito can easily rebuild Lazio if he were to sell a few players. And just being 100% honest with everybody out there, if you're interested in Manchester United, if you're interested in a big move, you have the opportunity to spend 35 or to receive 35 million euro from Lazio's standpoint for a player that, let's be honest, I really don't think he's performing that well. The Premier League has been spending so much money. I'm pretty sure that Manchester United would be willing to take a 35 million euro risk on Felipe Anderson. For what it's worth as well, and this is like another Ranocchia case, is El Shaarawy has been linked with about every team in Europe as well. The list goes on and on. I mean, we've seen reports that El Shaarawy is linked with Juventus, Roma, Lazio, Bournemouth, and the Premier League. I believe at one point Liverpool was interested in El Shaarawy too. So there's always a lot of replacements out there for players. I think Lazio do need to sell. I think firing Pioli would be a very bad idea. So let's move on. Let's talk about Dennis Praet, the Belgian who plays for Anderlecht. He's reportedly wanting a move. Fiorentina has been interested in him for quite some time. I think he's a solid player, Dennis Praet, but for 30 million euro, Fiorentina is not going to touch him. There is steep competition from the Premier League. You can go ahead and chop Dennis Praet off. I really highly doubt that Belgium is going to be coming to Italy. I don't think it's possible. Liverpool's going to spend a lot of money on a player like Dennis Pryor because they see the potential, and they see him as a cheaper alternative to the eventual superstar of superstars, Tielemans. Yuri Tielemans is the if Dennis Pryor is gold, Yuri Tielemans is platinum. And I just don't see Pryor coming to Serie A. That's not to say that he won't at some point, but moving directly to Fiorentina, I don't think it's going to happen. Now, there's another youngster I want to get into. His name is Jonathan Caleri. You probably read, if you're familiar with our website, you've probably read some articles on him. It's a huge talent coming out of Argentina. Huge talent. You have players like, at Boca, you have players like Osvaldo, who's coming back, Tevez. But Caleri scored quite a bit this year, but he's leaving Boca. Now, this morning out of Argentina, you have a unique situation unfolding, and it revolves around the equivalent of the Secret Service in Argentina investigating irregularities in Caleri's dealings. So, to give you some background before we get into this, because this is a big problem in South American football that nobody really seems to have an answer for. It is simple as this: third-party ownership. It is the cancer that is dragging down South American football. It is making players' lives difficult. It's making the move abroad to Europe difficult. We've seen it in Europe, but some countries outlaw it. Italy outlawed it. Italy and England, I know for a fact, outlaws it. But to make a comparison, Radamel Falcao's move from Atletico Madrid to Monaco was not under his own will. Doyen Sports made a killing. The third-party ownership made a killing from moving Radamel Falcao from Porto to Atletico Madrid, and then from Atletico Madrid to Monaco. They made a ton. What they do is they finance these deals. And so if a third party, let's say a third-party scout, they find a player in South America. As they all know, Radamel Falcao is a Colombian. But I'm not 100% sure on his origins with Doyen Sports and how long it's been. So you have Radamel Falcao was signed. Half of his contract was signed with Doyen Sports. Doyen Sports footed 50% of the bill to bring him to Atletico Madrid from Porto. So Atletico Madrid's like, this is great. We just got Falcao for 50% off. It's like Doyen Sports gave us a coupon. Sounds great, doesn't it? You're getting a superstar player for 50% off. Unfortunately, third-party ownership, like I said, is a cancer because sometimes teams and players do not have 100. What happens to teams and their dealings and the players themselves, sometimes it's not in their best interest. When Doyen Sports wanted to move Radamel Falcao, they moved. They forced a move. They wanted to cash in on. Well, Monaco was this new rich team on the scene. Monaco was loaded, hundreds of millions of euro to spend. And this is back too when the euro was much stronger, by the way. So Monaco was a really strong financial side. But then you had Anzi Machkakala. I am so sorry. That name is incredibly hard to pronounce. The team from Dagestan in Russia. Another massive billionaire-owned club. So Doyen Sports had the option of moving Radamel Falcao from Monaco or from Atletico Madrid to Monaco. Or it could have been somewhere in Russia. Maybe Falcao got really lucky because from what I've heard about Monaco, it is a prime destination. But the people who took the fall were, Atletico Madrid made a bit of money. Doyen Sports made a lot of money because they owned 50%. They financed the deal. Monaco paid big. They bought out Doyen Sports' 50% share. Everybody goes home happy, right? Well, in the case of Caleri, we may just be getting to the happy ending parts, but Caleri was owned by a third-party company, and there were rumors of tax fraud from his loan move to Deportivo Maldonado, and I think it's in Uruguay. If I'm not mistaken, I'll double check it. So the Internal Tax Services and the Secret Service of Argentina began investigating some of the transfers in the past of Jonathan Caleri, and they began to notice some irregularities. And it's almost kind of funny because Caleri's father said there wasn't a deal come Sunday. There's going to be no deal at all. All of a sudden, in the last few hours, we've gotten that Bologna has sent their team doctors over to Uruguay to go ahead and advance the medical, and he'll sign with them on Monday. So Caleri, the problem is not him directly. What did he do? He's not a fraud, He's just a soccer player. He's a footballer. The problem is with his ownership group. And I'll get the name right in a second. Because this ownership group, again, owns a stake in Caleri's contract. And the agent was in deep trouble. And again, football in South America has major political problems. That's all, fun and dandy. There are major problems. But when you have the Secret Service investigating the players, agents, and representatives, we're seeing a trend. So Bologna end up, to make a long story short, signing Caleri. He'll most likely go to Inter in the summer on some sort of loan deal. But who knows? So here's the story. The official, the quote, Caleri Gate from fcinternews.it, translated by Nima Russari. Good friend of mine, by the way, if you don't know Nima. So, Jonathan Caleri's proposed transfer story, the article reads, to Inter has turned into a spy story. According to the latest reports from La Nación, a Argentine paper, the latest person to get involved in the transfer is former sporting agent Gustavo Arribas, who currently works as the head of the Argentine Federal Intelligence Service. It was he who involved Uruguayan club Deportivo Maldonado as a bridge to bring the player to the Stellar Group. Stellar Group is the equivalent of Doyen. They are a third-party ownership group for football players. Again, they're the financiers. It's kind of a backdoor dealing. Anyways, after only a few days of being nominated to the top of the top position by the Argentinian Football Association by President Mauricio Macri, whom he has known for a long time. That should be noted as well. The Argentine Intelligence Authority denied Arribas' involvement, but the deal between Boca and Deportivo Maldonado has come under scrutiny of the Inland Revenue Anti-Money Laundering Service, or the AFIP. Arribas, Arribas is an agent in the group that owns 50% of the rights of Caleri. Arribas, however, seems to have guided his way through the maze of the law by identifying a promising young talent like Caleri and advising investors. So, what do we have here? What is Caleri? What is this? The whole Caleri gate? It's not Boca. It is not him himself. They are being used as pawns in a money laundering scheme. It's 100% that. It is money laundering, and that's why the Argentine authorities are investigating this transfer. Not Caleri's transfer to Italy, but in the past. The article concludes, however, the AFIP have been monitoring this transaction that would bring Caleri to a club where he would never play a match before being sold for millions to a third club. Bingo! It's money laundering. It's South American football at its finest. It's money laundering because the greed from these agents and agencies are making a killing at the expense of the players. In Italy, this is not allowed. You cannot have third-party ownership in Italy. You just simply cannot have it. And that's great because third-party ownership, like I said, is a cancer. So Caleri's coming to Serie A. That's great. I think it's wonderful for Serie A to get a player like Caleri. But the dirty fingers of having what it comes down to is this, I'll just be 100% honest with you, is dealing with players that have third-party ownership needs to be outlawed across the board from FIFA. And, it's hard to fix corrupt situations when FIFA, the most corrupt global agency in the world, will not touch it. It's hard to fix corruption when the government's corrupt. It's incredible. It's an absolutely incredible scene. Moving on. So we're going to look closer at some other rumors today. And I'm going to be honest with you. The thing that excites me the most is Juventus are not losing another Verratti. They're willing to take a chance on Sensi Mandragora because you have these players already, showing very strong signs of becoming great. They're not going to miss out like they did Marco Verratti. I like the way that they're structuring the deals. I like the way that they're saying, no more co-ownerships, but the teams are still able to work together to bring players. You're not having these youngsters brought to the big clubs directly and no playing time and not developing. We're looking at the next big thing in Italian football, and that is developing younger players. Tavecchio has said it himself, and, depending on how you feel about the Italian FA president, Tavecchio has gone on a crusade against foreigners to ensure young Italian talent has a chance to blossom. And I think that's the best strategy. I think it is. The last thing we're going to talk about today is where do we think Andrea Ranocchia will end up? Him and Bonucci have a lot of parallels. They both got their feet wet at Bari. They both struggled a few years ago, I think. They're both at Inter and at Juventus. The stories began to stray apart between Bonucci and Ranocchia when the last few years when Bonucci really began to improve. Ranocchia stayed the same. But Ranocchia has not been called up for a major tournament yet. Bonucci has been called up to World Cup 2010, Euro 2012, the World Cup in 2014. And now he's a mainstay. And, unless, God forbid there's an injury, Leonardo Bonucci will walk onto the plane in 2016 and this year as well. But Ranocchia, no. I really don't see it happening because they've gone to a back four. Miranda has pushed Ranocchia out. Juan Jesus is there. I don't see Andrea Ranocchia being a part of Inter's plans. But where he goes is that's the $1 million question is, does he stay in Italy? I don't think he's going to go to England. I'd be very surprised if he went to England unless it had to do with Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. I don't see Ranocchia taking a step back at this stage of his career. Inter want to sell him. They do not want a loan deal. I think that's the best thing is just to sell him outright and try and get him restarted. If it were me, I would say I would be like 100% honest. Send him to Sampdoria. Sampdoria need a strong center back. I think Ranocchia under Montella can become that. Andrea Ranocchia is a phenomenal prospect at the age of 27. Time for him to go forward. I say he's a phenomenal prospect because I look at Ranocchia and I say you have been the exact same kind of player since you were 21. When is this breakthrough going to come? There has to be a coach who can really, realize your talents. Norwich City's not going to do it. Bologna is not going to do it. I think today's rumor of Andrea Ranocchia going to Sampdoria is true. I think there's some truth behind it. I think it's the best thing he can do as well. But I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of IFD Radio. We'll be back hopefully in next week by Monday. I'm targeting a Monday edition to wrap up the weekend's action. There are some very big games this weekend, folks. Targeting getting back on Monday to recap the weekend of Corsa Mercato. Because we're going to have a lot of stories, I think, tomorrow and this weekend. Big games this weekend include Fiorentina versus Lazio on Saturday. The big one, AC Milan versus AS Roma. Tremendous contest. Both sides are struggling. Big game on Saturday. On Sunday, you have there's not really a very big clash. Some tricky ones. Juventus take on Sampdoria. They've had some problems the last few years beating Sampdoria on the road. You have Napoli are traveling to Frosinone. Inter at home to Sassuolo. So could be a big weekend for Inter. We'll have to see. But I hope you all enjoyed this latest episode and have a good night and a very safe weekend. Un abbraccio. Ciao.